Hey climbers, and welcome back to workout number 3. This is one of my favorite training sessions, so I couldn't be more excited to jump into it with you. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to get into. First up, we're going to have our zone 2 aerobic warm-up. Again, this is going to be a great way to raise our internal core temperature to get things started. And then after that, we're going to do some foam rolling. This is going to help us mobilize our soft tissue for the day. After that, we'll jump into our pre-climb training. This is a way that I love to organize some prep work before jumping onto the boards. So it's going to help us prepare really, really well to handle the forces that we're going to experience on the boards while saving a lot of energy. So we'll jump through that together and I'll explain a couple things on the hangboard there as well. And then we'll jump into our primary stimulus for the session. So again, we're going to be doing power bouldering or board climbing today. If you don't have access to boards, that's totally okay. You can do a traditional commercial set. You'll just need to be strategic about what type of climbs that you pick. Boards force a very specific style and allow us to use them for building power really, really effectively because of the moves that they provide for the opportunities that they create for us. So let me explain how this is going to work. First, we're going to start with a quick warm-up. This is going to be 5 to 10 boulders with ample rest in between. We're just going to look for a variety of either wall angles if we're just on the boards, or a variety of hold types, and a variety of movements to get us feeling warmed up and that we can find our flow. And then once we're feeling nice and prepared after our warm-up off the wall and then our warm-up on the wall, we're going to rest and allow our nervous system to cool down and our body to clear any of the metabolites we might have built up early in the session. And then we're going to go ahead and jump into the primary stimulus, which is going to be 4 to 6 boulders at about 80 to 85% difficulty. These boulders should be focused primarily on the physical side of climbing rather than the technical. The technical will always be a component, but here we want to focus less on problem solving and more so just on finding hard moves that allow us to move dynamically. If we want to build power, we need to move quickly. So dynamic moves, which we find often on the boards, are going to be our best bet for building power in a way that really impacts our climbing. So with all that being said, the last part of that is going to be doing some cool down boulders. We'll have 1 to 3 cool down boulders afterwards to just, again, clear some of the metabolites that we might have built up in our forearms and pulling muscles and stuff like that in this board session. Afterwards, we'll jump into our post-climb training. This is going to be a new type of stimulus that I haven't really showed you guys before, but we're going to focus on decompression or traction. Basically, when we're on these boards and doing some of these things that require a lot of really high intense forces on our tendons and joints, doing things afterwards to help alleviate some of that tightness that we might have created is going to set you up for recovery really, really well. So I'll explain how that works at the end. But then following that up, we'll just have our optional aerobic cool down. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the foam rolling. Okay, it's time to jump on this foam roller and use it to help us mobilize our soft tissue for the day. Foam rollers can be a great way to help mobilize your tissue and move some fluid around, basically help hydrate that tissue before we start to load it. So these foam rollers aren't a great tool to make permanent changes to the body, but they can be a great tool in assisting you for a warm-up, basically, or help open up your ranges of motion and mobilize your tissue for the day. So that's what we're going to be using it for first. We're going to start with some T-spine back bends, then some side bends. Then we're going to go ahead and work on our lats, hips, few areas on our quads. We'll hit our hamstrings, shins, and then forearms to finish it up. We're going to be using an inchworm method here. Basically, the idea is to move 2 inches up and then 1 inch down and then 2 inches up and then 1 inch down. And this is going to allow us to slowly work that fluid through the soft tissue and help mobilize it or move it around in a way that helps create a nice positive adaptation for the beginning portion of the session and really help open us up for the day. So let's go ahead and do some side bending first, and then we'll hit the rest of the muscle groups using that inchworm strategy. Okay, next up is going to be the quads. We're going to start with the upper section here, focusing on hitting kind of all sides of it on the top, and then we're going to hit the lower section. Then we're going to do the insides, and I'll show you the setup that makes it a little bit easier to do that. And then we're going to do the outside as well, kind of focusing a little bit more on the lower portion, like the hamstring or the upper part of the quad, rather than like directly on the side there. You really just have like some fascia and connective tissue there that doesn't really feel great to pound into. So we're just going to go a little bit higher and hit kind of that quad or that muscle tissue there above and below that kind of connective tissue on the side. So let's go ahead and try these out for the quad. So this is the setup that we're going to use for our forearms. The idea here is we're driving our leg into our hip, into our forearm, into the foam roller. This is going to allow us to create a ton of pressure against this foam roller and really mobilize those tight tissues on the back of our forearm. You can try to roll your forearm around and see what's comfortable for you. You can hit a couple different places and then get lower down on the wrist as well. And then we want to try to use that inchworm strategy again, just 2 inches down and then 1 inch up, or the vice versa, whatever makes sense in the direction that you're going. So try this one out. Again, don't go too hard here and beat yourself up too much. We're just trying to mobilize and aid in hydration before we start to do some of our hangs and hop on the wall. Okay, now that our core temperature is up and we've mobilized our soft tissue a bit, it's time to prime our nervous system and get our joints prepared to handle some of the forces that we're going to experience on the wall. So a couple of things that we're going to do here. We're going to do a couple different variations of a pull-up. So this is going to be basically a deconstructed pull-up. We're going to take the pull-up apart and do our different ranges of motion kind of in isolation. So our bar dead hang is going to start. This is going to be stretching out into our deepest range that we can get in our lats and our shoulder blades. And then we're going to do some rack-assisted squat holds. This is going to help us just get comfortable in that bottom position real quick. Then we'll do scap retractions and a rack assisted squat. The reason we're supersetting upper body and lower body here is, again, to save time and also allow those individual pieces to recover while we're doing the other one. So this is going to save us time and allow us to continue to move through our warm up, which is going to help us keep our heart rate up and continue to warm up our internal core temp. So from there, we'll do quarter pull-ups, curtsy lunges, regular pull-ups, and then rack assisted Cossack squats. After that, we'll get into progressive hangs. We're going to start with our feet on the ground. We're going to do lower intensity and longer duration, and then we're going to flip-flop that as we progress through. Start to crank the intensity up and start to decrease the duration. Again, we're just trying to fire up our fingers here and get our nervous system firing at that high level, basically allowing us to contract and be prepared to hit those higher intensities off the wall in a controlled environment so that we can handle that stuff on the wall when we get into it. Then we'll start to take our feet off the ground a bit and get into, again, a higher RPE there. And then at the end, we'll just do 3 pull-ups to make sure that we're feeling pretty good and primed and ready to go. After that, we'll jump into the primary stimulus. So before we talk about that, let's just knock out this pre-climb warm-up, and I'll see you on the wall after. Okay, last thing to do here before we jump on the boards are progressive hangs. This is going to be a great way for us to prepare our fingers to handle the forces that we'll see on the boards without spending too much energy where we're going to zap ourselves and take away from the quality session on the boards. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and pick a grip position that I'm expecting to use on the boards. So that's going to be a half crimp. We're going to start these hangs with our feet on the ground, and we're going to do longer duration and lower intensity, and then we'll flip-flop that moving forward as we start to warm up, going higher intensity and shorter duration. We don't need to turn this into a training stimulus. We want to keep this as a prep or a warm-up stimulus, so making sure that we're hitting like maybe one really good working set at an RPE of like 8 or 9 or so right before we jump onto the boards. But again, this needs to be something like a 5-second hang. It doesn't need to be really long duration. We're not trying to force a training stimulus here. We're just trying to warm up our fingers so that we have a super effective session on the board. We're also going to do some Copenhagen planks to prepare our hips to handle the forces that we're going to see on the wall and help us create tension once we're up there. Okay, time for our final prep set here. If you're a climber who would need additional load in order to hit the required RPE for this final prep set, instead of adding load to this, I'd recommend just dropping a hand or fingers in order to increase your intensity. This is going to help you learn how to regulate your load based off of an RPE rather than just following previous numbers that you might have hit. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and just use my middle finger on my left hand as a support, and then my right hand is the one that I'll be training for this first hang. So here's what it'll look like. So you can see from my example, I had a different load for both fingers. This is because I wanted to hit the same RPE, but I have a difference in strength between my sides. So again, instead of trying to like mess with weights, and you might miss the RPE that you're going for if you just like overload the weight or underload, a great way to do this instead is using those assisted fingers to really help you hit that perfect RPE by slightly modifying that load as you're in the exercise itself. So let's go ahead and jump on the boards. So a couple of things to do here in our warm-up. First, we're going to look for a variety of hold types in this warm-up to make sure that we're hitting a couple different grip positions and getting our fingers feeling really, really good before we get into the bulk of the session. And then we're going to start with a less steep wall angle. This is going to help us just, again, save a little bit of energy as we start to warm up and find our flow. And then once we've found our flow and our fingers are feeling really good, we can go ahead and kick the board angle down to the primary angle for our session and begin to really crank out those perfect power boulders, which are going to be around that 80 to 85% intensity, focused mainly on moving quickly and dynamic moves. So let's go ahead and jump into these few warm-up climbs, and then we'll jump into the primary bulk of the session. All right, now that the warm-up is done, we've tried a variety of hold types, and we just dropped our wall angle down. It's time to jump into what will be likely our hardest climb of the day. We're really prepared now. We just spent a ton of time warming up and getting really, really prepared. We found our flow. We've warmed up our hands in a variety of hold types. Now it's time to really put all this into practice and try to get these awesome power boulders done. So again, picking power boulders means finding boulders that are going to challenge you in your ability to move quickly or dynamically. And then also, they're not going to be limited by problem solving. It should be a pretty straightforward climb that just requires a lot of try hard and moving really quickly between holds or moves or whatever it might be. So the first one that I have here is called Switched Up, and this is an Austin Hoyt boulder. This one is V9 at 45. I've tried this one in the past, but I'm failing at the finish move. This one is super cool and involves a coordination move, which is kind of like rare to get on these boards. So that's why I love this one and I've picked this one. So we're gonna go ahead and start down there, work through this sequence, and then our finish move is gonna be one where we're moving really, really quickly and trying to catch this jug at the top. So let's go ahead and jump into this first one. power being a limited resource, we have to be really strategic with the climbs that we pick and the moves that we do and the amount of temps that we spend on each of the climbs. So this climb here, I'm still getting a lot of growth out of this bottom section. I'm really refining my movement pattern there, but it's not too physically exhausting. Whereas this top move here is pretty tiring. So I think for this boulder, I'm going to cap myself at about 4 to 5 attempts maximum before I'm going to want to move on and continue my session. That way I'm going to keep a really nice level of intensity without just sending it all at the beginning and then losing out on some gains later down the road in the session, especially when it comes to like executing at a high level. We want to make sure that we also have the ability to learn if we are going to be spending energy and creating this systemic fatigue out of the session. So be strategic with the climbs that you pick and then rest amply in between these climbs to make sure that you have time to recover and allow those energy systems to really activate when it's time to apply them to the wall. So let's go ahead and jump into our final 2 attempts on this boulder. Okay, wasn't able to take down Austin's boulder, but I'll definitely be back for that one in the future. So let's go ahead and move on to another one. This one here is a boulder that I set called Sofa Wolf. This goes at V8 at 40 degrees. We're at 45 degrees right now. I'm thinking this move will still go, but it's going to be a little bit harder. So let's see if we can generate out of this move dynamically to get to this jug, kind of the intended jump move out of this one. So as you can see, I'm absolutely getting my ass kicked today. So I'm going to bring the intensity down a bit to make sure that I can complete some of these boulders while still getting enough moves in to create an effective stimulus. Okay, that's it for our board session. The last thing to do now are banded decompressions. This is a great type of stretching to do after your climbing session, as it's going to aid in relaxing your body, and that's what's ultimately going to help promote recovery. The only time that we really recover at a cellular level is when we're sleeping, so we want to make sure that the things that we do in the gym are either helping us relax so that we have better quality sleep, or we're just not spending any more resources to make sure that we're not exceeding our capacity. So if we were to jump up onto this bar now and do a bunch of weighted hanging, we're going to be increasing the stimulus on our tissues, thus reducing our ability to recover. We're just adding more work in. Whereas this here, we're keeping our RPE so low that it's going to help us relax, and that relaxation is what's going to promote recovery when we go to bed. So the idea here is we just spent all that time pulling all of our muscles in kind of to our spine and our midline, and now we're going to stretch them out in a passive method. So the muscle shouldn't have to really contract here like it would under a loaded stretch. This is all going to be really passive and should be very relaxing. Okay, that's it for workout number 3. I had an absolute blast with this power bouldering and board climbing session and hope that you did too if you tried it out. We're going to be doing a lot more of this style of climbing in the future and just organizing it slightly different to give you an opportunity to continue to learn and grow. So I'll see you in workout number 4.